Hello, everyone. My name is James Williams. I am Director of Programs with the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, the global neutral voice of mobile. Now, you join me in a very warm and unseasonably hot north of England. And today I am joined by the Magnificent Seven, what I'm calling the Magnificent Seven from the speaker's perspective. And first up, let's get straight into it. Introducing the speakers, we'll then come to the subject and we'll get moving on fairly rapidly because time is against us. There's plenty to say about this amazing subject of business messaging. First of all, I'd like to welcome Rajiv Singla. Rajiv, welcome. Hi.
Hey, James. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Thanks to you and your company, Globe Teleservices, for sponsoring this webinar, first of all. So, Rajiv, you're the CTO and essentially a boss of everything messaging at GTS. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Fantastic. And nice to have you with us. Thank you. Next up, I'd like to welcome Ashutosh Jha, also with GTS. Hey, Ashutosh, love to see you. Look, so smart, so smart. I always like your ties. Always like them.
Very kind of you to say that.
No, always. Anyway, you're the SVP Global Messaging with GTS. A very warm welcome. Next up, I'd like to welcome Shikha Gupta from Airtel in India. Hi.
Hey, hello, how are you?
Hello. Good, Shikha. Great you could join us. So, Shikha, you're the VP of everything roaming and mobile solutions. So, messaging, as in SMS, voice, IoT, everything. You look after it all, I think.
Not voice, the rest of it, yes.
Not voice. Oh, okay. But there we are. So, yeah, I'm not always perfect, as you can see. There we are. Next up, I'd like to welcome Noah Barshai from Rakuten Viber. Hey, Noah. Hi. Hey, look at that.
Hi.
Your brand perfect above your shoulder. Very, very nice. So I think you're Senior Partnerships Account Director. Is that correct? Have I got the right title?
Yes, indeed.
Perfect. So a very warm welcome. Next up, Ira, not moving too far within the same country. We've got Ira Cohen from MMD Smart. Ira,
hi everybody. Thank you. It's an honor, and thank you for asking me to participate in this very significant panel.
Nice having you on board. So you're VP of Marketing and Business Development for MMD Smart. I think that's correct. You haven't changed in the past 5 minutes, so you're still there.
Well, they keep asking me to take out the garbage and other things, but I'm sorry.
What we've got to do in the world of messaging.
Startups.
Next up, we have Nadia Patel, who is from Omantel. Did I say that right? I keep doing this. Oman, it's not Omantel, it's Omantel. I have to get that right, your country pronunciation. A very warm welcome. Now, you're on mute, Nadia, you're on mute at the moment. Usually that's my trick, being on mute, but
yeah,
no problem. So
you can hear me now, yeah?
We can hear you absolutely fine. So Nadia looks after everything international roaming related for Omantel, everything that comes under that. So a warm welcome. And finally, last but not least in any way, is Nicholas Nikrian from Deutsche Telekom, VP of Voice and Mobile Solutions. Hey, Nicholas, nice having you.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. And again, thanks for getting me involved, engaged in this discussion. I appreciate it. Nice to meet you.
No problem whatsoever. So to start off with, for you viewers, to tell you what's exactly the format of what's happening today. We haven't got long, it's 3:04 nearly already UK time. So we're starting off with a very short presentation from Rajiv and Ashutosh, just introducing GTS, setting the scene, and then I'll launch straight into it with one question to every participant here, which should really get the discussion moving from the get-go. So Rajiv, Ashutosh, over to you.
Thanks, James. Thank you. So let me share my screen. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for taking your time and joining this interesting topic and discussion. So I'll just give you a brief about what Globe Teleservices is and in which areas we perform and the group companies of Globe Teleservices. Today, the topic and the discussion will be the changing dynamics in business messaging, which, like all the speakers, they will be speaking and giving their valuable inputs on that. So the first one is who we are. So Globe Teleservices, we are like a young organization started in 2012 and with very energetic manpower. And so we are like a group of diverse organizations which we perform in multiple domains, telecom being the flagship one. The first one is Globe Teleservices, which basically we started in 2012, and we have it in voice and the business messaging, and our prime product, which is Armor, and the other one is the in-house developed the billing support system, wherein we have that mediation and which is well compiled with all the major SBCs in the world. The other one is the New Vision, which is our software arm, and they are like, let's say, the future of the software development. That was like started in 2004, and they are handling quite a big projects in the software arena. Payout, the other one, which is into fintech, and they are like they are into digital lending as a services, and they make the borrowing easier and easier to repay. So that's the motto of Payout. PinBrain, that's another venture that started in 2017, again into the fintech, more into the eKYC and the credit scoring of the customers, which is like IDBrain and CredBrain. So these are the two main products we have. Universe Testing Solutions started in 2007. And they have the flagship automation, robotic process automation, and with the name of the product as RoboMagic, and the testing automation with the TestMagic. So they are quite visible in the Middle East market for the banks. Portsea, the last one, started in 2017, basically into IoT solutions, and wherein we have the container tracking and the GPS tracking, all those products which are related to the IoT. The motto of Globe Teleservices is we make the communication work smarter. That's what we believe in, and we act as a solution provider to many of those telecom operators across the globe. And that's how we're trying to do. Global footprint. Like, we have been like fortunate enough that we have the global footprint and the global presence in less than a decade in more than 30 countries. And with the future, to fuel the future growth, we have 1,400 man-hands, which are working tirelessly along with GTS to see the vision and make it happen. So if you see, like, we have multiple offices across the globe and the presence with the employees. As we're talking more into SMS and we are talking about the business messaging, so anti-fraud solution. So that is the prime product we have, and where we are deploying into the African market. And so the basic USP of our anti-fraud solution is an integrated voice and SMS solution. Both the solutions are compiled into a single platform. We keep the mobile network secure, protect them, and monetize their revenues. So last one, we got some basic awards, and the Eurasia Awards are the best telecom service provider in 2020. Before this, it was the best VoIP solutions provider with Hong Kong in 2018. Don't wait, let's get started. With GTS, you get a partner that has the tools and technology to get your telecommunication needs in place. Yep, thank you. James, that's it from my side.
Thank you. See, I was doing my trick. I started talking and I was muted. I do it about 2 or 3 times in every hour, so I did it. Rajiv, thank you very much for introducing GTS. You set the scene perfectly there. And indeed, the topic at hand is about the changing dynamics in business messaging. Now, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, and on one post yesterday, we had one of the panelists here. He knows already what I'm going to say. He actually, yes, that would be you, Ira. you responded with something, and can you just explain what you responded with and why? And let's get this kicked off. So I learned a new word yesterday. What is it?
Axiomatic. If you look at the term, the changing dynamics, dynamic is a force of change. So we're talking about how this force of change is currently is in the process of changing. Is it changing? And that's an axiomatic statement. It happens to be true in this case, but that's what the axiomatic word means.
Well, do you know what? We're going to be investigating that right now. So
I'm an English major. You have to believe me. I learned to have a BA.
Well, perfect. And you've remembered it well. So there we go. I learned something yesterday. And I think we've got a few viewers around the world. If you're viewing it live or whether it's recorded as well, you've learned something. So business messaging is very, very much a changing, shifting environment, and it's super fast growing. But what I'm going to do is, I think it's going to be about the only question where it's the same question I ask every single panelist. And after that, then we're going to roll into a discussion. And my question to every panelist, I'm going to start off with Shikha for this one, is I'd like you to rank, or to rate, should I say, 1 to 10, 1 being terrible, and please, I'm sure we're not there, but 10 being absolutely perfect. We can kick back, we can relax, put our feet on the desk, our work is done. How successful are we in the world of business messaging? So it could be mobile operators, business messaging providers here, chat app providers, like Noah's company, Rakuten Viber. How successful are we, or would you think, from 1 to 10 at actually delivering the solutions enterprises and subscribers, like all of us, actually need and want? 1 to 10, what would you say?
Yeah, I think we would probably be at 7. There are a lot of changing demands from the consumers, and also the enterprises are wanting to engage with the consumers in a different fashion. So a lot of work needs to be done. These are new technologies, new business messaging applications which are coming into picture, which are different from the traditional messaging. So that needs to be imbibed. You need to understand what the consumers want, right? So I think we probably would be at 7. Things are moving.
We will come to that in more detail, Shikha, because we don't want to use everything within the first 5 or 10 minutes.
Sure.
So that's fine. Noah, to you.
Okay. So thanks. Okay, so of course that I think that especially Viber, the first messaging app, recognized this whole business messaging solution. I wouldn't rank us in a poor position. However, I don't think we're 10. We're not excellent. We're still learning. It's the learning progress. At the first, when we started more than 5 years ago, we learned from the SMS. Now we see that our competitors, additional messaging apps that joining this industry, are learning from our mistakes, because we were the first. It's a big responsibility to be the first. It's a very big responsibility. So we did a few mistakes. We learned, we improved. We did more mistakes, learned again and improved. So I think, generally speaking, it really becomes a bigger and wider ecosystem. Where everybody can learn from the others. Next step is, of course, to become 10. We're recognizing the next stage. We are moving now to more conversation mode, not only these notifications and then the promotion.
We'll be talking about that during this, the conversational commerce side of things, the fact it's two-way. So no, thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Next up, Nadir from Oman. What would you rate the industry? So you guys are the operators, the business messaging providers here,
Yes.
chat app providers like Rakuten Viber. What would you say?
Well, from a mobile operator perspective, I think we are still in the range of 5 to 6. Yes, we have the customers, but I think we are still not able to reach or understand exactly where our customers' wants and needs are, which is quite evident because the way WhatsApp and these other OTT apps took over, the business from mobile operators of the messaging P2P business, and the fact that we have so many providers today on this call, and also from the participants, that they are able to understand more what our enterprise customers want, and we as an operator holding the assets are just trying to be a platform to bridge these two gaps and be a service provider in between. So I would still say we are in the range of 5 to 6, and we have a long way to go.
Okay, thank you very much. And Nicholas, yourself, Deutsche Telekom. But again, remember, this is about we're not just talking about Deutsche Telekom, we're talking about the industry as a whole. So.
Since I very recently, just a few weeks ago, joined Deutsche Telekom, I come from of course I come from a wholesale background, so I can on both ends. I have more of a pessimistic view on this. I think we are sub 5. I would give it a 4 score in this area. I think and some of the questions that you're going to follow later, I think kind of goes into that direction as well. There is a lot to be done. I think we are in terms of understanding what the customers want and how to make this happen from an SMS specific perspective. I think I would score it around 4 and not higher.
Well, okay, that's the stall out absolutely there. And Ira, over to you. You were nodding.
So
you were nodding fairly vigorously at the 4, so it seems like I'm going to come out with something like that.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 3.85. Actually, close to the 4.
Wow.
I'm giving my score based on the context of this conversation, which is the changing dynamics of it. And
exactly.
We are anything but a dynamic industry. Unfortunately, we wait too long, and then we have to react to things. So it was already mentioned how the chat apps have come into the markets, and now we're trying to catch up with RCS and other ways of catching up. We don't see the dynamics. It's a very big ship, which takes a long time to make a very small turn. And there's unfortunately the input that comes in from the market is not always taken into account when we're getting ready to prepare something. And so based on that, I think that based on the past, we've done some good things in the past, but as has already been said, there's a hell of a lot to do, and it just takes too long to get them done. So I give it a 3.85.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ashutosh. It's okay. So no problem. You were interrupted. The world of telephony.
No, well, I'd score it at 6. I think a lot of good work has happened. The only problem I see is there's not enough collaboration happening between the different people who who could offer this service to a operator to an enterprise, because there's an operator and then there's a solution provider, and they're not collaborating as much as they should be. Or even operators themselves, within themselves, they don't collaborate that much. So otherwise, I think we've done a pretty good job so far.
Okay.
6.
Rajiv, let's see if you've been copying his homework or not.
Yeah, so for me, like it's still a lot of things to be done. Like I'll rate it around 5. So more more work to be done, and we need to understand the demands of the enterprises and the way the business is changing. Like we see like every business has its own time, and we need to change our analysis, or we need to change our tactics, we need to change our strategy, we need to change the way we work. So that is still a lot to be done rather than the traditional A2B SMS. The enterprises, they demand more, so that is where we should be working upon. Like we are working on RCS and many other things which will be coming upon. So those things that should be like I'll say that operator and the OTTs and the enterprises, the aggregators, all they have to collaborate and they have to synchronize themselves so that we can serve them better.
Okay.
Now,
many of you know me, know I try not to assume anything. And the subject here is business messaging. But let's, like a jigsaw puzzle, let's just throw all the pieces onto the table right in front of us. What channels are we actually talking about? So out there in the world, from what you guys are seeing with your customers all around the world, what channels are we really talking about here? I'm sure the audience at home will have a good idea, but let's get it all out on the table here. So let's start off with Shika. Just start off with a couple of channels. What have we got in the world of business messaging?
So you, other than messaging, you SMS, we have WhatsApp channel, RCS, we have Viber, we have Telegram.
Oh, you're doing it all. I said two.
Sorry.
That's it, guys. She'll do all your homework for you, so no problem. But so that's right. So SMS, so application to person SMS. Remember, we call it A to P SMS. That's application to person SMS. So B2C, B2B SMS. Perfect. And the chat apps. Nicholas, what other channels have we got in business messaging?
Right now, of course, you see a lot. I mean, the direction is also going into what we call the omni-channel part of it. So, I mean, going through that, I mean, we see some of the areas that are being exploited by CPaaS environment, UCaaS environment. So, well, I have to stick to two. So, I would put the omni-channel and then the CPaaS environment as two other areas of how businesses are trying to communicate with their customers.
Yeah, but within omni-channel, what solution, what kind of things do you have? So
omni-channel right now, omni-channel is relatively basic when you look at what's implemented. So it's either SMS or it's voice. There is not much else into it, right? So and whether it's a chat box or that is added to this, I mean, in most cases, is a very, very simplistic way of what omni-channel is at this point in time. So
Nicholas, you raised a very interesting point. Is one I always bring up on webinars: omni-channel, because omni-channel seems to be one of those phrases thrown around by so many people in the industry, but actually what most people have solutions-wise is multi-channel and not omni-channel out there. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good point. We'll come back to that. Nadia, what other channels are there for enterprises to communicate with their customers? What are you seeing?
From my side, I think there is also the in-app chat communications. So, for example, I'm sure a lot of our operators and enterprise customers also, they have their own applications, and then they enable in-app chatting or messaging, where you can reach out when you are on the app itself of the enterprise customer to have a discussion with them.
Correct.
And, yes. Other than that, there is also, I mean, I'm not sure whether people are still using it, but there was this flash SMS, which we occasionally still get sometimes from some enterprise customers.
That's mainly for 2FA though, mainly for two-factor authentication, flash SMS side of things.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's a class zero product, as we call it in the industry. Yeah. Okay, so we've got flash SMS. What else have we got? Anyone else out there? It's like, Ira, go on.
Well, I think a lot of companies communicate with the customers via their CRM. Now, what is the exact communication channel doesn't make that much of a difference. They could do email from that channel, which nobody here has mentioned, which is a lot of business messaging still going via email that people are reading on their mobile phones. So that's a big one. So I'm going to choose CRM because that gives a wealth of different channels that companies are using. And then I'm going to add an email, which I think a lot of companies around the world are still using. As much as we think that it has value or that the other channels are more value, majority of companies, just easier for them to send emails.
Well, actually, MEF did some research. So every year we ask 650 smartphone users in 10 countries around the world. So that's 6,500 in total. And on a recent MEF report, looking at the messaging side of things, guess which channel was almost top as being favorite for the actual end users and subscribers? Believe it or not, I couldn't believe it personally. It was email. Email is still used out there, and we should never forget that out there at all. Anything else out there that we're seeing? I'm thinking of one thing that's used very heavily, but no one's mentioned yet. Anything? It's the most basic thing of all. I think it's been around since 1876.
The voice calls as well. I mean, I still communicate.
Nicholas said voice.
Have an issue. Yeah.
Or did you say voice? I'm not. It's my listening.
I said already, William. James, sorry.
You remind me of being at school. No, at school I was called Williams.
Sorry. That was part of my omni-channel, multi-channel speech.
Yeah. Exactly. So voice. So I think with business messaging, It's so easy to fall down that rabbit hole and think, oh, it's all about SMS and then RCS and chat apps and things like that. But never forget, email is still there and voice plays such a huge role in business messaging.
If I can interject, I think one of the reasons why as an industry that we have this one way of looking at things is that we properly in this industry, we think that one size fits all. We'll have a solution, the entire world will be able to use it. It's a native messaging app, everyone's going to use it that way. But the world is not built like that. And one of the problems that we have is that we don't understand that there are different types of use cases that customers are using for business messaging, whether it's the enterprise or the end user. And we don't differentiate enough between the types of offering. We don't differentiate between the really, really big companies who are doing things one way, the mid-market are doing things another way, and the smaller companies who are doing things another way, and then differentiate between what their business verticals and how they need to operate within their own business verticals. So there's a massive amount of exponential types of uses that are there, but as an industry, we come out with, this is what we're offering to you. And that's what I think is part of the problem.
Okay. Rajiv, yeah, I was going to say, Rajiv, to you next, yeah.
So interactive videos, they're also becoming quite popular nowadays for those enterprises. So like other than the voice where you pick up your call and speak to an agent or some enterprise dealer. So interactive videos where you can see and what the enterprise offers and all those things. So
live chat, exactly. You got that one. Yeah.
Exactly. So that the oldest things out there, voice and film, video, those are the oldest things out there. And they are absolutely huge. And people forget. It's a fantastic point. I actually forgot video as well. So yeah, great point, Rajiv. Absolutely great point. Noah, just back to you. So Ira raised an interesting point there. We seem across the industry to be viewing everything through one lens. So every organization is the same. And when you go to a conference, I don't know about you, but everyone talks about the massive brands, the massive banks, everything like that. But people forget that 99% of businesses out there are small and medium-sized enterprises. So let's say your solution, your Viber business messaging solution, can that be used effectively, easily? So if I'm a small business, could I easily get my hands on your solution?
Yes. So we are aiming for all type of sizes, let's say, of companies, not only big companies, not only medium companies, not only small companies. It really depends on the needs of the brand. So it is for small businesses, and it is for the business for few purposes. For example, not only for the promotion of the business, for dedicated, let's say, upsales, cross sales, or whatever the sales, let's say, sales force needs to do, but also for the day-to-day communication. And it's true that for smaller businesses, it's more difficult for them, let's say, we were under the impression that it's more difficult for them to adopt the technical, all the digitalization that we were forced all to adopt in the past 18 months. But what we see is actually an increase in these type of companies that coming in to use our platform, because eventually at the end of the day, they have the need. So they find the right partners that integrated to us. Great, they open the channel, and it's very easy for them to shift all the face-to-face communication they used to have, and all the SMSs and the emails, to shift at least some of it, if not all, to the Viber platform. Like Ira said, it's a big ship, right? The SMS in general, and also the email. So it's not something that will, let's say, die in the near future. I doubt it. But it is evolving, and it needs to be changed. Like, I feel that we are pushing the change faster, but it has to come, it has to follow us. And I don't think anyone will let it die. There are also a lot of people out there, a lot of areas without internet. It sounds very, for us, very weird, but without internet. Or my parents, for example, they're doing great with the smartphone, but they still need the email sometimes. They still need, to call, to talk to a person. So I don't think it will die, and it for sure will serve small businesses and medium businesses and all type of industry. This is what I said at the beginning. It's a ecosystem.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you very much.
There's a room for everybody, basically.
No, thank you. So just for the audience and also for the panelists here, you can see the Q&A. There are quite a few questions coming into the Q&A, and some of them are aimed at specific companies amongst you. So feel free to respond whilst we're talking here if you'd like to. So, and thank you, audience participants, for your questions very much. Ashutosh, how do you think companies, business messaging companies, are actually really giving SMEs in particular the tools to really engage in a multi-channel way? Do you make it easy? Do GTS, for example, make it really easy for smaller businesses? Or do you think an SME still needs that little bit of technical know-how, knowledge?
No, I don't think so. I don't think the technology is all that complicated. And I'm a great fan of instant messaging. I foresee instant messaging as a medium that organizations will adopt in the coming future for, even for critical processes like maybe customer support or order processing and things like that. And, making a sale, etc. So I don't think it's all that complicated, and there are plug and play solutions also for people to just organizations who are not who don't have technical know-how can also just plug into a system and start using it. Like there's a company which does what it calls a virtual it's called a virtual secretary, or a virtual call center, where where they have a call center at the back, and then they sell bits of it to different organizations. So yeah, it's plug and play. So it's not really that difficult.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Shika. So if we look at business messaging, we all agree that SMS. Well, we haven't actually said it, but I think all of us would kind of say that SMS figures strongly in the world of customer engagement, with around 2 trillion transactions a year and in the business messaging. Now, a statistic from Mobile Squared is just 3% of registered businesses in the world, 3% use SMS. What do you think? What would you do if you could, to really go out there and push business, not just talking SMS, that's just an example. So if SMS is one of the bigger channels out there, yet only 3% of businesses use it, it means we've got a lot to do in the industry. What are the key things you would personally do to get the message out there that business messaging is here and now? Use it. What would you do?
I think, SMS is 3%, what you're saying, and probably, the email, the largest communication medium which the enterprises are using. Because see, the use cases are quite different. So you can't really generalize that what SMS would replace email. Email has its own use. SMS has its own use. If I have to send a newsletter, what I'm doing, say, if I'm an organization and saying this is new product I'm launching, I want to say 10 features. Right? So the easiest and the larger place I want to get the information to, an email would be a preferable medium of communication rather than an SMS. Right? SMS is just 160 characters. So on the use case, you will have to see what the enterprise needs. You can't just replace SMS with an email or instant messaging with an SMS. So it all depends on the use case. Yes, the communication mediums are evolving, the interactive channels are evolving. So I think everything has to complement each other and give a suite of services to the enterprise, wherein they can choose what is the best mechanism for them to communicate to the customer. For one, they would use email. For the second, they would use, I'll give you an example. Say, if I'll take an example of Airtel, right? So if I'm launching a new plan and if I want to send an email to my consumer saying, talking about the features of my products, right? So an email probably would explain better, or I would probably do it on an app. But if it is a customer raising a complaint to my customer care or through an app and I need a closure, I would probably interact with the customer through voice. If it's supposed to be called, then I would close the case with sending a message, because I can record the delivery of the message very clearly. So
Yeah.
it's a mix of the means of communication. It is not one single thing.
I like that. Yeah, sorry about interrupting you, Shika, but I need to move on to someone else. But what you say, I loved what you said there, that they complement each other. Because personally, remember when SMS came out, 1992, and then MMS came along. Those of us of a certain age here on the panel remember about let's say 1992 as SMS, around about a few years later, 2000, MMS started coming out really strongly, and people said, oh, MMS is going to replace SMS totally. And then about 10 years after that, people started thinking about RCS, and oh, RCS is going to replace SMS. And I think we need to get away personally from this whole replacement thing. It's the complementary side of things. But Nicholas, I'm sure over the years you will have heard from many people talking about, oh, SMS has a limited shelf life for business to consumer engagement, A2P. It's only going to be around and successful for the next X years because chat apps like, for example, Viber and WhatsApp will come along and replace it in the A2P domain. But what do you think has happened in the past year, 18 months to really, really push the older traditional channels back front and center? And how long do you think these channels, particularly SMS, will still grow strongly? Is it temporary, this?
First of all, in terms of how long do I believe SMS A2P as a growth potential in our solutions, portfolio of solutions that either as wholesalers or mobile operators we offer to the customers. In most cases, when you look at the 5-year plans, the majority of the companies still count the next 5 years as growth potential for SMS A2P, and I'm one of those that believes in this potential with 3 to 5 years down the road. There is an easiness around usage of SMS. That I think, and it's important, I think, to understand the real impetus why people are thinking about moving away from SMS. Because again, there is the easiness, there is the fact that every customer, whether they are on a feature phone or whether they are on other devices, they can still interact with SMS. So from a reach and capillarity and how you can actually reach your customer base, it's still it has the highest potential in terms of penetration and interaction with your customers. So right now, when you see, again, the real impetus is basically the cost element of it. How much does it cost me as a bank or as any other business to interact with my customers, and how can I push down that cost? If I cannot get it from SMS, I come with other means that I can communicate, driving my costs down. And if we can manage that cost element well enough, I think SMS will continue to grow. Again, also, it's still today considered to be one of the safest and most controllable elements of communication. If you're a bank today, if you still want a two-factor authentication, you do it through SMS. Even OTTs and digital service providers use SMS if they want to communicate where the quality of that communication is important, okay, such as two-factor authentication.
But, okay, Nicholas, you raised a great point, and actually no one has mentioned the S word until right now, security. And again, yes, there was some furious thinking from Ira there. Is SMS really that secure? What's going on in the world of 2FA? Because if we look at the use cases, I appreciate all the questions coming in, by the way, from participants. Thank you very much for your question. I'll try and get to some of them, but time really is against them. There's so much to talk about. But in terms of use case, it's a lot of many transactions within business messaging are two-factor authentication oriented. Ira, is SMS really safe? What about other channels for 2FA? What's out there? What should people be using? What should businesses be using?
I'll answer that in a sec. I just have to say something before. And I worked for a company that developed a really, really great disruptive technology. It's still used today. It's called flash memory. It really destroyed large segments of other segments of technology. And the one rule that we learned when I joined that company is the rule of disruptive technology is there'll always be a different disruptive technology to disrupt our disruptive technology. That's the rule. You always have to be aware of what's coming because it's
changing dynamics. Yeah.
Right. That's I was saving that for this thing. Email was great. Email was a disruptive technology at the time that changed the way that companies could engage, that all of us could engage with our relatives who live far away from us, and companies can engage. SMS disrupted that in a lot because the emails get less than a 20% open rate. Of all emails that are sent around the world, it's less than 20%. Mobile messaging gets 97%, 98% open rate, and most of that is within the first 90 seconds. So just in terms of the reach, if you're promoting a new product or a service, that's why I would choose that. To answer your question, and this goes back to what we've seen over the last 16 months since COVID has come in, is that there's a huge increase in the amount of fraud on these channels, but a huge increase on fraud, just tremendous. A lot of the big companies are looking for other ways to do their own sending their OTP messages. We know that Google has a solution they're looking at, Microsoft, Facebook, they're all looking at different solutions for this. And one of the things the industry has to take into account is that when WhatsApp comes and says, we're fully encrypted, when Viber comes and says, we're fully encrypted, when Telegram says, we're fully encrypted, nobody can know. And then SMS comes and it's not fully encrypted, and we all know that it's fully encrypted. And as the service provider, we can see every message that's sent on our network, which leads to GDPR issues, for example. We have to look at how we're going to solve this issue, because this is one of the changing dynamics of our industry.
Okay.
The inherent.
Thank you. I need to move on to some other people. We've got lots of speakers here. Rajiv, security and consumer trust. I'm sure you've got things to say about that, sir.
True, I agree with Ira. Like the SMS is quite a secure channel, I'd say. And otherwise, if it is not, then we are securing it with our MNOs by providing the firewall solutions.
Okay, that's simple and very, very clear. Very, very clear indeed. Okay, now we've got representatives here. We've got business messaging providers. We've got mobile network operators, chat app providers. They're enterprises out there, but in business messaging, so much of business messaging today has URLs, so web addresses embedded within messages. And I don't know about you guys, but here in the UK, there's quite a lot of fraud, and a lot of it is to do with the URLs embedded within messages. What other companies are there out there? So I think that the mobile ecosystem, it goes beyond just business messaging providers, mobile operators. There are other types of company out there that have a role to play in cleaning things up and making sure everything remains secure so that ultimately the consumer is protected. What other types of company are there out there, do you think, that should be doing more and could be doing more to protect consumers beyond you guys here on this panel? Any of you, actually, I'll open this out.
Well, we've been working with blockchain companies to provide high-level technology. Firewalls are good for preventing fraud. They're not as good as for preventing piracy or hijacking, and that, I think, is a major issue. The whole spoofing senders, and then diverting the traffic with with fake text, which has happened to some really big financial and e-commerce companies in the last year and a half. Or even COVID vaccinations has been an issue over the last year and a half. This is something that we're all going to have to look at very seriously, because it could seriously affect our business. And so we've been talking to blockchain companies who do this on a regular basis, and basically to create an alternate channel parallel to the SMS channel. So the SMS message is sent encrypted, but then there's a key that goes alongside of it in order to decrypt it, much as we do today in other
like a secure SMS type solution.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Rajiv, you mentioned blockchain there. I know. Sorry. Blockchain is is used extensively in India. And coming out there.
Coming to that, yes.
Sorry, all of you from India. So Shikha, Rajiv, and Ashutosh in particular, you three. I know you're leading the way in that in terms of country blockchain.
Just adding to what Ira was saying, so blockchain India has implemented a blockchain system for controlling the fraudulent messages to consumers, right? So there is a communication policy the government has laid out, and there needs to be a registration of the principal entity, the sender, the content, and template. Now, even on the preference of the consumer, what he wants to receive. So there is a full program which is running. It's not yet 100% implemented, but yeah, 80% implementation has happened, and we are seeing, some kind of impact on the control of the misuse. But yeah, still people try to find a way of misusing that blockchain technology.
You always have that. The humans are ingenious. That we are ingenious. Now, Nadia, over to you. What one thing? So that was security. Another thing is a word beginning with R, and a few of us on here, or few people on here may go, I don't like that so much. Regulation. Nadia, what role does regulation have to play in the world of business messaging? Do you think there's too much regulation? Do you think there should be more? And do you think regulators should stay out of it? The growth, what's your position, your personal opinion on this?
Well, no matter how hard you try, the regulations and the regulators are never going to stay out of any business that we do. So that's like somebody whom you have to live with for the rest of your life, being a telecom operator or a mobile solution provider. Now, in terms of regulations, there are two aspects that I think the regulator needs to look into. One of them is that there is a local regulation and an international regulation. Now, we are seeing, as an operator also, we are seeing that a lot of regulators in the Middle East region also, to be more specific, they're getting more and more involved in the way they want to control and monitor the international SMSs. So we receive, if, for example, Oman Air wants to send an SMS to a Saudi customer, we need to sign certain documents, and we need to get certain documents signed by the Oman Air company to submit it to the Saudi operator so that they can then get it whitelisted on their network.
But Nadia, isn't that more of a commercial model issue, this whole split of domestic and international, or does it, or this example you're talking about goes beyond that?
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. If the regulators try to also get into, if they want to implement the same domestic regulations at the international, it may not be completely feasible, right? Because an Oman Air would always say, why do I need to sign all these papers and give an undertaking that I'm not going to send spam SMSs? Then the customer has himself said that, yes, I want to receive, and Saudi customer says, I want to receive an SMS from you or from your company. So this is where the regulators also need to be involved in the entire ecosystem, and they play a very critical part to enable enterprise customers and encourage them to be able to send SMSs beyond their domestic reach.
But there are a couple of, if I may, James.
Please go ahead.
I think there are a couple of elements here as well that Nadir, you're absolutely, I totally agree with you. The issue here is that usually in most cases, and when you look at the European Union, the jurisdiction becomes an issue. Because these regulators have their own jurisdiction and they cannot go out. And then when you look at the European Union, that they want to regulate certain things, then the sovereignty issue comes in. A country saying, I don't want to deal with this. I have my own sovereignty and I'm going to decide what I want to do with my telecommunications sector. Because again, it's still a major revenue generator for any economy in any country. But the other element is that I think it's a very sensitive, it has always been a sensitive issue, because I think it's wrong to regulate one part of the industry where the other parts are either not part of it or they don't agree to be part of it, and the regulators again have no jurisdiction to impose. I mean, when you look at the mobile operator regulatory environment versus the OTT regulatory environment, which is non-existent.
Exactly. Should social media companies be regarded as publishers, for example? That old chestnut, yeah.
Yeah, there has to be a common ground in there, yeah.
That's probably, now, one more thing. Noah, sorry, go with Rajiv, and then come back to Noah.
Like the bodies like MEF and GSMA, they should be like playing some important role to lay out those regulations so that it should be followed up. Like in voice, we have that ITU and IEF, so there are many other forums wherein like we follow that rules, and that has to be followed globally.
And that's what we're trying to do. I wasn't trying to engage in any self-promotion during this webinar because time is short. But I think MEF has done a semi-decent job of a business SMS code of conduct. So the trust in enterprise messaging, it's a start. It's a start. Yeah. Whatever you do, there will always be detractors. But you've got to start somewhere and move forward with something. So yeah, we're trying things, and all members of MEF are working together on initiatives and are doing a decent job with the industry. And indeed, different trade bodies. So the GSMA, we have a close relationship with the GSMA, the I3 Forum, the GLF, and many other trade bodies out there. And I think that's all we can do from that perspective. We need to keep those avenues of communication open. Now, we're very, very close to the close of this, believe it or not. The idea was going to be 50 minutes and then 10 minutes for Q&A. We've got a load of questions to get through. We'll never get through all those questions. And I really just wanted to close this by talking about what will the future of business messaging really look like. So Noah, just start with you on this very, very quickly. I know you, very quickly.
Okay.
Business messaging has changed massively. You talked about it. And I'm so pleased, there have been so few mentions of the C word, the COVID words during this panel. But digital transformation has been real the past 14, 16 months. It's really moved business messaging on. And I know certainly with Rakuten Viber, there's been an expansion in your volumes of the business messages, the chat service for businesses, things like that. What do you see happening in the next few years? Do you think this COVID thing was a blip, or things are really being pushed upwards?
Okay, I'll be short because you hinted, so I'll make it short. The industry is shifting towards all these super apps, meta apps, right? This is what we see, and led by our users' desire for more and more, more usage of the application for all the occasions they need, and constantly upgrading Viber app and adding different more and more functionalities and services, and this is what we see. The consumers and the brands, this is the direction that they look for. So our goal is really to offer to our users the opportunity not only to do the text and the calls through Viber. Okay, we all understood that this was a nice foundation. We need to all the up-to-date information they need about everything, the courier packages, the taxis, whatever they need to do, the food, the delivery, to do everything inside this meta app. So this, in short, this is the direction that we're going to.
I, of course, was expecting that answer. Well done. You need to fight that corner 100%, but it's true. And I think, look, we're coming up to the close in about 6 minutes. I've got a few questions. You can all see, I think, the questions in front of you. So I'm just going to burn through a few of these really, really fast. Now, I think the other R word, RCS, hasn't been mentioned that much. I've got a question here from Pallavi Verakar. How will RCS going to take place with respect to A2P? Will it complement A2P business or disturb the flow? And by A2P, I think we're talking about SMS. So Rajiv, quickly, RCS, do you think RCS is going to replace SMS? Is it complementary? What's your quick take? Few seconds.
Yeah, it will complement the A2P SMS, like Nicholas said earlier. So the reach of SMS is quite easy, and it's affordable for the users. So RCS, definitely it is the need of the hour, where enterprises, they are asking for more features, and they are asking for instant messaging, and wherein they'll get the easier support. That will be there, but it will not be replacing SMS. They will be complementing the SMS. Okay,
we've got a commercial model question here, and I kind of get it. Just to summarize here, really talking about aggregators studying price increases before actually implementing. So the importance of getting commercial model right. And it's not just aggregators. I would actually extend that out to mobile operators. Do you think, Shika, coming from a mobile operator, do you think mobile operators in general put enough thought and care into the commercial model for example, SMS, with this whole split of domestic and international, or not? Or it's short-term gain at the expense of long-term gain?
This short-term gain, the international and domestic is a kind of bifurcation for monetizing from OTTs generally, or international partners who are using their consumer base to build their business, right? So that is the only reason where it is getting differentiated as domestic and international. If you look at the domestic market, this question probably is in line with only the international piece. But if you look at the domestic market, which is much larger than the international A2P, that's the real business. If you talk about
Nicholas was nodding ahead. Do you want to say something quickly? Say something quickly on that. I could talk.
Absolutely right. I think mobile operators, first of all, when it comes to their P&L, international part of the A2P is a very small part, as Shika said, compared to their. So there is no sense of urgency. There is no impetus for them to say, I need to do something with my internet.
That's clear.
And the last thing is that the elasticity is unknown. They don't know what happens to that international part if they change something. And that elasticity part is something that we as an industry need to understand and educate mobile operators to say, if you do this, it would work. So I think these two elements are very important in this
commercial models, super critical. So do need to think long-term rather than short-term. Ashutosh, very simply to you, and we're going to close in the next 3 minutes now. So we bring it swiftly to a close. The industry, wow, business messaging, the acquisitions going on. So many big valuations. The companies, the ones really handling the majority of the traffic globally are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there are fewer and fewer of them number-wise. Do you think that's good for the industry? Do you think that will impact anyway the quality of service for enterprises or subscribers? Will it improve it, or is there a risk, do you think? You're on mute, sir.
So I think it's a good thing for the industry, because most of these acquisitions are complementary. There are big organizations, they're missing a piece, and they buy out a company who has that piece, and then they can actually improve the quality of the solution they offer. So while the consolidation, might lead to
So your opinion is consolidation is good. Nadia, your Nadia, your take on it, and then Ira, I suspect I know from again the head movements kind of give the game away, sir. Not very good at poker. Nadia, your take on this very quickly. Do you think consolidation is great for the business messaging industry as a whole, or not so?
Consolidation in any industry is good when it complements each other. Otherwise, what happens is the big fish keeps on eating the other smaller players. And ultimately, you have a monopoly kind of an environment that gets created. So I think if consolidation is complementing two companies' strengths, which brings them together, it is definitely positive.
Yeah, but Ira, is it positive from what you're saying?
There are two ways to look at it. The first one is that it's very, as I think we said before, the differentiation of this market is key. And the bigger companies get, the less, sometimes they get less attached to what's happening in the marketplace. And particularly from the service provider perspective, you need to have companies that are able to speak directly to the enterprise and bring that information into the industry. And bigger companies, fewer there are that are speaking directly to the market.
Ira, thank you. I'm sorry, but I've got to move on. I've got to close this up, believe it or not. We're 59 minutes, 10 seconds in already. It's been amazing. We've covered a lot of ground with so many of you from all around the world. And first of all, I'd like to thank Globe Teleservices for sponsoring this session. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Carol and other people behind the scenes from the MEF team for enabling this. And of course, my speakers today, Ashutosh, Rajiv, Noah, Ira, Nadia, Shika, and Nicholas. So thank you all very much for joining this session. I appreciate your viewing live, and to all of you viewing on a recorded, hope you enjoyed this as well. And it's been my pleasure moderating this. And this business messaging topic has a long way to go. So I'm sure I'll be joining many of the people here and others in the coming months and years, I'm sure, at various events around the world. Thank you very much for your time, and all the best from over here. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Have a great day. Have a good day, everyone.
Stay safe.